YouTube. It's very cold out here in the shed today, but even so, we're going to work through it. The GT Aggressor Pro upgrade. A few products that I did purchase, I will leave the links down in the description. They were either through eBay or Amazon, so you can check those out. First up, fmxxtr 780 handlebars. These I purchased on eBay. Also purchased the krsec stem to change that up a bit. I think these look pretty good. Went with the ergon GA2 fat. I believe it's summer blue. Pretty cool color. I think that'll stand out on the bike. Advent X shifter. It's got the little rubber on the thumb. Advent X 10-speed cassette. KMC 10-speed chain with the quick link. Advent X 10-speed derailleur. fmxxtr action crank arms, 170 millimeter. Going to keep the existing bottom bracket and just bolt this on for now. 32 tooth chainring from Snail. Okay, so installing the rear cassette, the two tools that you will need are some sort of chain whip to keep the cassette from rotating, and you're going to need a cassette removal tool. Adjustable wrench, and just crack that nut loose. That one was actually really loose. Remove the skewer nut. And remove the old cassette. So the original cassette that was on the bike was an 8-speed. I didn't change the free hub body. This is a 10-speed. It fit on perfect. I didn't have to change anything. In case anyone was wondering, it's the same free hub body. So that's installed. Obviously, you could see that the Maxxis tires are already on the bike. This is the Minion DHF Maxxis. It is tubeless ready. It's not tubeless right now, but it is tubeless ready, and that's a great thing to have as an option if you want to lower the tire pressure on something like this. You would just have to take the tire off, tape up the rim, and seat the tire, fill it with sealant, but there'll be another video on that in the future. Also on the Mongoose Dolomite ALX, this week we do have this stuff coming for the tubeless setup for the Mongoose Dolomite ALX. Alright, spring goes back on. Quick release nut. Back on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the rear derailleur, the front derailleur. I'm going to be replacing the rear derailleur with the Advent derailleur. I'm going to install the new handlebars, the stem, the shifter, and then adjust the cables on the rear derailleur. And I'm going to uninstall the cranks and install the crank arms on the bike. So we're going to break the chain. I'm going to use the Park chain tool. We'll remove one of the links and remove the chain. We're going to remove the pedals from the bike. This way we could use the pedals on the other crank arms. Probably should have done that while the chain was on to make it a little bit easier, but we'll get them off with the wrench. Okay, next we're going to remove the crank arms using a number 8 Allen key. Next we're going to remove the crank arms with the crank arm puller. When you're threading the puller into the crank arm, be sure that it marries up to those threads, because the last thing you want to do is strip this to get it off. Make sure it sits deep in those threads to pull this other side off. Make sure it sits deep inside the threads so it'll allow the puller to work and do its job. This crank arm is stripped out. Okay, plan B. So the threads were stripped out on this left side crank arm. It is off. The cup on the bottom bracket is a little damaged, but the bottom bracket itself is rotating freely and fine. I don't think that it's going to have any impact on the way it performs, but we will find out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to install the chainring on the crank arms, and then we'll put the crank arms on the bike. Crank arms all set up. Has the arrow pointing up. I'm going to place them on the bike. Looks pretty good. I'm going to take off this front derailleur. Put the pedals back on. One is left, one is right. When you're on the bike, the right side is your right side. It's while you're on the bike. Make sure you have some grease that you apply to the pedal thread before placing it into the crank arm. It just helps get them out later on. if you start off threading the pedal, or actually anything that you're trying to work on, if you do it in the opposite direction first, it usually seats itself. I tightened the pedals up with the pedal wrench. I am going to place the rear wheel onto the bike without the chain on it. Makes it a lot easier. I'm going to do that now. Make sure you seat the wheel. I usually reseat it once it's down on the ground. Okay, so the way that I do my chain when I'm putting on any chain is you're going to go from the big chain ring in the front, which this is the only one. If you had 3 chain rings in the front, obviously you would go to the big one. So you're going to go big to big, and then you're going to overlap it by 2 links and then cut your chain. And then you're going to use the quick link. Now you can bring the chain down to give yourself some slack. Run it through the derailleur, through the pulleys. That is it. That gives me enough slack on there. What I'm going to do is adjust the B tension on the back of the derailleur, and that should pull the slack out of this chain. So I'm going to use the number 3 Allen key, and I'm going to adjust the B tension on the back of the derailleur, and that's going to tighten up my chain. I'm going to give the gears a quick run through. Pretty good. Here's the easy part. I'm going to be placing on the ergon grips. It has a little up right on top of the grip in case you weren't sure which way to put these on. Alright, so the grips are on. These are the fat grips. They're actually really nice. If you have never tried them, I definitely recommend trying them. Okay, so to wrap up the build, I took a GT Aggressor Pro from Dick's Sporting Goods and decided to convert it from a 3x8 drivetrain to a 1x8 drivetrain. I did this by using a fmfxtr crankset with a 32 tooth round chainring. I will leave all of the descriptions and links down below. I also changed the handlebars to the same brand, which is fmfxtr, 780 31.8 long bars. I used ergon grips, the Fat 2, I believe they're called. I used the Advent X thumb shifter. I used the Advent X rear cassette, 1148. I used the Advent 10-speed rear derailleur and a KMC chain with a quick link. On the bike, I also changed the saddle, which is the WTB Pure, which is right in front of me. It is the most comfortable saddle. If you haven't ridden one, please check it out. I also had the fork upgraded to the Apixin, which I used the Suntour upgrade program, and I'll show you the card that they sent. Maybe you can get yours done if you're looking to upgrade the fork. Mine kept bottoming out. It just was a nightmare. The other thing I did was the Maxxis tires, the Minion and the Icon. Again, thanks again to Wolftick Videos for posting that. The 2.8s are on the bike. There is plenty of clearance. You pretty much have to go to a 1x when you do this because the rear tire, the side tread was hitting the front derailleur. So by eliminating the front derailleur, it gives you plenty of clearance for that rear tire to clear. Lastly, the stem by krsec. It is a short stem and it looks really good on the bike. By using the action crankset, I was able to utilize the bottom bracket that had been replaced on this GT about a year ago. It's a square tapered bottom bracket. It works fine, and I wanted to give the action crankset a shot. So all I had to do was mount the crankset to that bottom bracket just the way it was. Future upgrades on the GT Pro Aggressor will be hydraulic disc brakes, maybe a dropper seat post, but definitely some tubeless tires. If you guys have any comments, please feel free. If you like the video, hit that like button and subscribe. And guys, be safe.